Hello guys, and welcome to another video and welcome to another round of the Manufacturers Cup. And here we are at Dragon Trail Seaside, but this time in reverse. And I'm driving Mazda, which I signed for this whole season. And you probably already know this corner, but this time it's gonna be in reverse. So we got that chicane in reverse, and my qualifying was actually going pretty decent. I know I'm with the Mazda. Mazda is not the best car in the qualifying, and Supras were dominating this event as well as Genesis. So yeah, I was just trying to do my best, and already kind of P9, not the best position. I mean, this was top split, so anything that is better than P7, P6 is already a very good result in the qualifying. And unfortunately, I couldn't improve my result. I only finished in P9, and this was not the greatest starting position. And I did this race, I actually thought about this race, and I wanted to do 3 stops. So the first 1 lap on the hards and then 3 stints on the soft tires. So it's kind of a difficult thing to do because all of the other guys are really quick, and if you don't time your strategy in like a perfect way and your pit stops are not exactly that great, you might be not in that such a great position. And when we were talking about timing, I meant about the position that you're gonna get after you do your pits. So it's never a good idea to just get stuck behind someone. And you might even notice that I'm using TCS, and TCS was kind of a good option with my car. Mazda is a very tricky car to drive on hard tires. Mediums and hards are kind of I would say that they're tricky to drive on, but softs are decent, let's say. You will find out why in the next couple of minutes. So here we are using TCS2 for the first lap, and it was looking like a pretty decent and safe first lap until I saw this one. So this was actually kind of, I wouldn't call it even a fight for P8 because he made a mistake. I went to the inside and there it was. I got promoted into P8. So this race was kind of already looking good for me, only 6 seconds behind the lead. And I thought, if I time my strategy in the right way, if I do something right, eventually I will, I'll be able to get a couple of places, because Mazda was a really good car on tires, so it's much better than the Supra or the Genesis. So this car can do about 14 to 15 laps maximum on soft tires, while the Supra or the Genesis can do like 12, maybe 13. I would call it really 12. And yeah, on the soft tires, as I said before, TCS is going down to 0, and you probably noticed that I'm already kind of trying to see, okay, which braking balance to use. So I was using +3, which was a good idea in the qualifying because you want to get that rotation of the back end, but in the race, was it really that great? Not exactly. I mean, you will see in the next race why exactly it's not the great one. And yeah, I just got a couple of places because the other guys around me pitted, and literally nothing much was going on. I mean, except this moment, just getting into the chicane. I mean, usually it does happen. I watched the replay. It was, I would call it, it was a fair move, but then if you're behind someone, if you're really close, you cannot really see what's coming up in front of you, and this will most likely end up in a crash. Of course, you never want to do that, but it does happen. It really does happen. So it was very unfortunate, but a couple of laps later, I caught up with this little group, and there were a couple of cars in here. I didn't really know why at the point just when I caught up to them, and I realized that Calster was really slow, and this means only one thing. He was definitely in the dead chicane, and something happened. And then I watched the replay later on, and this is exactly what happened. I mean, it happens especially at Dragon Trail. 34 laps on the circuit, and it was a tough thing to do. 34 times through the dead chicane, and you have to be fast. And here, Doctor just let me pass. I mean, it wasn't even a fight. I think he just realized that we're probably not on the same strategy, and if we start fighting now, we will probably lose a lot more time. So I think it was fair move from him, and I think it was also smart for his own race as well as mine. So, I mean, thank you very much for that. I mean, you don't usually get people doing that, but in the top splits, you will eventually start to see, okay, people are actually thinking about the long run, not exactly winning battle by battle, and then realizing, okay, I'm losing about 10-15 seconds. So that was definitely not the strategy for him. And then I pitted, and it was refuel time. So at one point in this race, you had to refuel, which took quite a long time. couldn't really save as much fuel as I wanted, and there was no point of saving fuel here. So you just go into the pits once and you refuel, and that was about it. And now, just when I got out of the pits, I couldn't defend this position. Super had so much better straight line speed, and he had the angle to do it. So that chicane once again coming in, and it's, as I said before, it's really difficult when you're behind someone, because once you got the dirty air, it's difficult to kind of judge where the corner is and how much you need to be turning. But in the end, I think in the end, I did it all right. And now, caught up with Gran Turismo. He's a really good driver, but the RCZ, not a very great car. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, this car was probably the worst car out there. Tire wear wise, pure pace wise, it was difficult to drive this car, and he's usually really quick. He's even in the top 10 times more often than not, but here you can see he's really struggling, P10, and he wasn't even in the pit. So yeah, it was just trying to, I mean, I was just trying to kind of get a place or two, and you can see his, yeah, the car was just wobbling all around the place, and there was no point of eventually fighting me for such a long time. And I don't think he was actually fighting me. He was just keeping his lines, and I really didn't have the straight line speed to overtake him. And you can see here, so I got the speed through the corners, but then on the straight, when we got onto the straight, if he does not make a mistake like he did here, I just cannot follow. I mean, this car is slow. And then he decided, okay, I mean, this is not the fight that I want to be in, and then he just let me pass. I mean, once again, thank you very much for that. I probably spent a little bit too much time behind him, and then this happened. So I caught up with this little group. There were two Italian drivers in front of me. I think they were really quick, and I think Arc had a slight damage. And then I tried to get myself to the inside, and then I had this little push, and I was like, okay, I need to save the car. So I don't even know how I saved it at this point, because it was just going sideways in a dirty part of the track. And then suddenly he makes this mistake. I go on the outside, and there was no defending for this one, because I had a lot more straight line speed, and this was a move well done. So got myself into P9, and I watched the replay of it, and yeah, it was, I think it was just too early to turn in. I don't think this was anything intentional or something, but it was just too early. I think he was kind of not judging the corner in a proper way, and also later I found out that he got damaged. So I mean, no harm done. In the end, I got my place, and then eventually you can see all of the other guys pitted, and I decided to stay on my set of tires for a very long time. So at this point, I already should have been in the pit. So my strategy wasn't optimal. It definitely wasn't optimal. I had Killian and Rick in front of me, but then just a couple of laps later, I mean, it was literally 24th lap, and too late to pit on the soft tires, and I just couldn't utilize them in the right way. So I got myself into P6 just behind Hoss here, and he is, you know, he was flying at that BMW. I didn't understand how that car was so good. I mean, definitely over the curbs, in the corners, it was just a very good car to drive. Not to even mention that he is a good guy to drive the car. So yeah, I think that definitely has something to do with the overall pace. Yeah, he was really good over the curbs. I just couldn't follow him here in the middle section. I mean, I kind of tried really pushing it, but you know, when you're doing 34 laps on the circuit like this, it's 34 times that you have to do the dead chicane, and it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. And a couple of laps later, I think his tires were just dying out a little bit, and I was starting to catch up with him. It was kind of looking okay for me at this point, because I knew that, you know, if I can follow him here in this middle section, and especially in the dead chicane, I can most likely go for a move in, let's say, the last lap or maybe even last 2 laps. So the dead chicane went okay. It wasn't the best. I mean, I could have probably stayed in 5th gear, not to downshift into 4th, and you know, just minding my own business, I would say here, you know, taking my own lines, not really thinking about him. But I realized that this car is different. I mean, different in any way. So I just tried to, as I said before, I really try to take my own lines, but it's difficult when the car in front of you makes such a line or makes something different. You're just trying to follow him because you cannot really see in front of you, and then you just make a mistake, which seems very easy to do on this track, because there are not a lot of zones where, you know, you got full visibility of the corner, especially in this one. So it's a downhill section. I think this is probably the only one where you can see, okay, properly I'm seeing the corner, and then it's like 2nd gear on the way out. And why am I talking about this? Because it's very difficult to judge something. It's very difficult to judge the corners, it's very difficult to judge the curves, and that's exactly what happened here. So second gear, third gear on the way out, he just takes a different line. I misjudged the corner, and then getting onto that curb, my car cannot handle that, and I crash into the fence. So he was good over the curbs, I wasn't, and then in the end, that's exactly what cost me there. So I followed him, it wasn't that great, but you know, P7 in the end, and now we move on to race number 2. And the race was actually starting off pretty decently. I was P7, qualified in P7, I would say that it was really a good one. And then I decided to do a 2-stopper. So yeah, it's a risky one, it was definitely a tough thing to do, and I didn't know how the car was going to react to something like this, and then I realized that I had to be extra careful if I want to make this thing, if I just want to make something out of this, because staying on, you know, I would say staying on those tires for 14 to 15 laps seemed almost impossible, and all of a sudden I realized these guys have a completely opposite strategy. I mean, Supra and Genesis were not that great on tires, so they couldn't, there was no way that could have stayed about 14-15 laps on the same set of soft, so it was impossible for them. And also for a couple of other cars it was still impossible, but for my Mazda it was, you know, it was actually okay. I possibly could have maybe went in 15, but it was really difficult. And then I decided to pit in lap number 5, but later I realized that possibly staying on 6 laps is probably a better idea. Here, tapping slightly the fence, and I was lucky enough not to get any kind of damage. And now catching up with the Menti, he just opened the doors up and he said, you know what, you're in a fresh set of tires, there is no point of finding you because we're just gonna lose time. And if you're both losing time, you're both kind of not getting the most out of our strategies. And lap number 11, this was kind of an easy move. I don't know why someone took this old BMW, because the new one is actually a really decent car, and eventually it's gonna get you like a lot better performance than the old one, but you know, everyone has their own preferences, so this was a move well done once again. So I'm in P4 and all of the other guys pitted, and then I realized that lap 18 was going to be a nightmare for me. You can just see those tires, so the rear tires were absolutely gone at this point. So they were still drivable, they were still kind of okay, let's say, but I had to use TCS, and through the dead chicane I was much slower, and I think in this lap I lost about a second and a half, maybe even 2 seconds. And then I realized Haas was behind me, and then it's like, oh geez, you know what, I should probably leave a bit of room for him, not to brake too late. I don't want to destroy my race like in the last corner before the pit stop. So yeah, you know, you can go, you can just pass me, and then I'm just gonna mind my own business. I'm gonna go straight into the pits while using TCS, because in the last corner the car was impossible. It was almost impossible to control. I wouldn't say it was impossible because I did it, but it was difficult. It was definitely difficult. And once again, it was time to pit, and for the last stint, which should have lasted for 15 laps. So that was 14, and you just saw what my tires looked like. It was terrible. And then I kind of started playing with the braking bias, and I realized that my braking bias in my first race wasn't great. I was running +3, but if I wanted to keep my rear tires alive, I should have done -5 from the beginning. So from the beginning of my stint, it should have been -5, just to save those rear tires from wearing out. I mean, it was kind of okay, but yeah. Then again, catching up with the Menti, we were kind of on completely different strategies. It was absolutely different, but every time I got out of the pits in the next lap or two, I would catch up with him, and then eventually it was, you know, it was always like a fight in between the two of us. And then, as I said before, 15 laps in these tires were almost impossible. Breaking out, I tried to go defensive, but you can see how much the car is sliding, and I cannot get onto the power. So even with TCS, even just trying to take a wide line, nothing worked, because the car was undrivable at this point. So the rear tires were gone, and it was just about pure survival mode from this point. Even over the curbs I had to be extra careful, and you can actually see me now this was the corner where I thought, okay, I'm gonna lose it, because now I'm under the brakes, the back of the car slides so much, I had to give it a little bit of power to stabilize, but then the Italian behind me was like, what are you doing? I mean, why are you slow? I mean, yeah, I wish I could give him a message and send him, okay, my tires are dead, I cannot even do the corner properly. And then later he went on the outside, and you can really see how can I'm just trying to survive for the last couple of corners, because the car, you can see here, it's sliding so much. The TCS is activating all the time, even at TCS free. So usually you drive this car with maybe TCS 1, TCS 0 is probably the best one, but here, I mean, the last corner is something that I really feared about. And then I looked at the gap. I mean, it was a couple of seconds to key, and then I realized that I'm just gonna take this one slow. I'm just gonna take it easy and literally survive this last corner. So basically, if you're on the straight, if you're driving in the straight line, nothing will happen, but in slow corners this car was impossible to drive. So yeah, I was lucky enough to make it into P3. If I extended my stint to 6 laps on the hards, I could have possibly ended up in P3, but it is what it is. P5 and some decent points, 339. And if you would like to know more about tire management, you can have a look at my video, which I'm going to post down in the description. So guys, I really hope that you enjoyed in this one, and until the next time, bye.